Samsung has always been a huge player in the mobile phone space, and the Z Fold 5 only elevates their status. Join me as I tell you about the phone that lets you see the heavens itself and back down on Earth, lets you get more done than any other phone in the West. Before I talk about anything to do with the Fold itself, I want to first highlight why I think folding phones are the future. You don't need to look hard to find out people are still skeptical about folding phones. However, folding phones offer so many practical use cases that can and will enhance your life. Of course, there is the common, well-defined use case of watching media on a 7.6-inch tablet screen that fits in your pocket, but there are other advantages a folding screen offers too. Having a tablet that fits in my pocket makes the Fold my favourite $1,800 Kindle replacement. Additionally, the added screen real estate allows me to do the most cliche thing and write part of this review itself on the Fold. Of course, I could do that on any phone, but the Fold is the only phone that is comfy to write on. Being able to use a Google Maps while walking around a city that I'm not familiar with, using a 7.6-inch tablet that fits in my pocket, is, well, an indulgence I'm glad to have. And when you end up in a restaurant that has a French menu in the middle of Spain, the added real estate the Fold offers while using Google Translate is once again a courtesy no other phone can offer. Of course, the Fold is a multitasking beast, being able to open 3 apps in split view and even more in a floating window view, opposed to a traditional lackluster slab. Opening multiple apps in split screen is actually useful when your screen is a tablet size and not a smartphone size. As we're already on the topic, let's talk more about the screens. Unlike your traditional dull candy bar phone, folding phones require a screen on the outside of the phone, so that you can quickly use the phone when you're in a hurry and you don't always have to open it. But then, when you have 2 hands free, you can open it up and enjoy its luxurious tablet screen awaiting you on the inside. The brightness on the inner and outer screen is almost double the nits of last year's screen. Sadly, in the bright sun rays of Spain, the 1750 nits isn't always bright enough to compete with the brutal summer sun, but majority of the time, the screen is fairly usable in the sun's August assault. The outer screen on the Fold is a 6.2-inch OLED, and unlike most people, I actually enjoy the narrow design of the outer display. It makes one-handed use great, and I don't ever really feel that cramped compared to a normal phone. When I do get hands-free, I can just open up the phone and enjoy a 7.6-inch grand display away me. The crease that's interfered with every single folding phone thus far does make an appearance on the Z Fold 5, and in Samsung's typical fashion, the crease is deeper compared to most of the competition. But after a year of using the Z Flip and 3 weeks using the Z Fold, you just stop noticing the crease while using the phone, unless you're actively looking for the crease. Well, the crease itself may not be that big of a deal. The tendency for your $1,800 phone to crack at the crease is, well, kind of a big deal. The ultra-thin glass in Samsung's foldables have been cracking since the 2nd generation, and year by year Samsung's claimed to fix the issue. However, this year Samsung may have finally been able to fix the issue with their new Hinge design. Samsung are now following in the footsteps of Motorola and basically every other folding phone out there by implementing a range drop hinge design. This allows the phone for the first time on the Samsung Foldable to close fully flat, just like almost every other foldable on the market. And unlike my Z Flip, the hinge feels a lot smoother all the way through the opening of the phone, instead of the weird jolt I get around halfway with my Z Flip. But this could be due to my Z Flip being used almost a year, and me flicking it open with a flick of the wrist each time. One of the other benefits of going with a raindrop design is that it should decrease the crease. However, it's the same in my eyes as it's always been. Still a gutter in display, but like I said before, it's not a big deal. You get used to it like you get used to a notch on a phone. On top of the crease having a tendency to crack down the middle, one of the other somewhat minor issues on Samsung's foldables is the screen protector lifting at the edges. I dealt with this twice myself on the Z Flip. The first time Samsung replaced it for free, and the second time I had to pay a £30 fee. This year, hopefully, the new hinge design should stop the screen protector from peeling. Every folding phone I've used so far has had subpar battery life compared to, well, candy bar phones. But this time around, I'm glad to report that I've had somewhat decent experience with the battery life on the Z Fold 5. I'm using the phone in light performance mode, which in my opinion makes zero sense to not use. It barely decreases any power and it helps to save battery. I used it on my Z Flip over the last year and never noticed a hit to performance and only ever noticed a gain to the battery. The battery on the Z Fold 5 with light performance mode is able to get me through a 16-hour day, but I still do have to charge the phone in the evening on some days, although that's mostly days when I'm using the inside screen a lot. On most days, even with hotspot being enabled for hours at a time by the pool, the phone can last me all day, only just dying around the time I go to bed. Only 2 days after moving into the phone, I was on my way to Spain, which gave me a chance to see how well the battery actually lasts in real-world heavy use. At around 3 am, I left the house with a full charge. My flight was at 6:40 am, so for the next 3 hours and 40 minutes till my flight, I was streaming music through Bluetooth and using my phone constantly with the inner and outer screen. Once I got onto the flight, the phone was around 70%. I was not expecting that. I was expecting to have to use a portable charger by the time I was on the flight. In fact, to my surprise, yet delight, the phone lasted a 2-hour flight while watching a downloaded TV show on Disney Plus and a bit of reading on Kindle. Once I had landed, I started to stream music and scroll social media while waiting for a rental car, and the phone was still going strong. By the time I got into the car at around 11 AM Spain time, I had been using the phone constantly for 7 hours straight and only just hit the 30% mark, something my Z Flip of yore could never dream of. Side note, I had my iPad with me on the flight, however I didn't feel compelled to take it out of my bag, as the screen on the Z Fold was more than big enough to entertain me on the flight. Unlike the Samsung phones of yore with TouchWiz, these days One UI is actually good Android skin. One of my most used features of the Fold is the taskbar. You can have up to 8 apps in it and show your 4 most recent apps. I use it every day to quickly jump between apps and drag apps from the taskbar into split screen view. You can even take advantage of the screen reader state the Fold offers and have 3 apps open at once on the screen. You can even add pop-up floating windows on top of that if you really want. When using split screen, I prefer to use the phone in landscape orientation as you get more screen real estate for each app. One of my favorite features that Samsung Foldables offer is flex mode. Bend the phone at any angle and watch as apps bend to split the content between the crease. On my trip back from Spain, I used flex mode to watch Good Omens while keeping a slideshow of my dogs at the bottom, because why not? Side note, whoever created that final episode of Good Omens is one evil and despicable person. Taking photos or videos is really where flex mode shines, as you're able to use the phone as its own tripod to frame up your shots. In fact, just in my last video, I needed to get a few shots I missed, whether I was away and didn't have a tripod, but the phone was able to balance itself up to get the shot I needed. Well, I'll also have to thank the 2 bedside tables for holding up the phone in the first place though. One of the least practical yet one of my favourite use cases of flex mode is propping up the phone in a laptop mode. This is not as useful as a real laptop, even as useful as connecting a keyboard to the Fold itself, but if you're in a pinch and need to do some writing, it's actually not too awful. While One UI is a mostly smooth experience, there's some frustrating Android bugs I still find myself running into. One thing which I've only experienced on my Z Fold and not my Z Flip is that there is no option to swipe down on the fingerprint for notifications. It just refuses to show up in the settings, so my Fold, yet my Flip, it does show up in the settings. I do understand why it doesn't show up, as this feature should be available on the Fold. And of course, as per usual, Android always seems to get notifications seconds, sometimes minutes after my iPhone receives any sort of alert. In fact, after I transferred everything from my Flip, some apps wouldn't send me notifications until I turned their notifications on and off. Although, I will credit Samsung, using Smart Switch to move everything from one phone to another was an effortless and seamless process. One of the most key experience on a book-style Fold is making sure the apps seamlessly transition between inner and outer display, and unlike most other manufacturers, Samsung actually do this really well. Things have gotten better over the years compared to what I've seen on previous Folds, but some apps can feel janky when switching between tablet and phone mode, and most apps still don't have a tablet app or refuse to make them, so Samsung just stretches the app out. I'm looking at you, Instagram. Oh, and don't worry, Instagram has its usual abundance of glitches and bugs on the Fold. The other day I went to share a new post on my story and tapped on it to show the caption on the story, and well, the text decided to overflow past the border. By default, when you have an app open on the inner screen and go to close the phone will lock, but sometimes you want to continue the app on the outer display. Thankfully, Samsung lets you choose which apps you want to continue on the cover screen on an app-by-app basis, but you can't decide on the fly if you want an app to continue on the cover screen or the phone to just lock. I have set to continue all apps on the cover screen and just have to make sure that I press the power off button before putting the phone in my pocket. The feel the Fold gives you in your hand is a premium feeling. It does not feel like a cheap phone, and as it should for its $1,800 starting price. And while the inner screen does look stunning, it is still plastic, so you need to be careful, although folding phones aren't as fragile as you might think. Over the past year, I've treated my Z Flip like I treat a slab phone. I still can't spot a single scratch on the inner display, although I would not recommend taking this phone to beach due to the lack of dust resistance. The phone is waterproof though, so don't worry about sudden rain showers or using a phone as a shower speaker. I can now finally say that a phone has beaten the cameras on my 2-year-old iPhone 13 Pro, and that the cameras on my Z Fold are my new favourite mobile photography/videography cameras that I own. Compared to my iPhone, the cameras just feel more refined, and the shots I can get of it feel enchanting compared to my iPhone of yesteryear, although the night mode shots in the iPhone are in a league of their own compared to the Z Fold. I actually ran a poll on my Instagram comparing some shots between my Z Fold and iPhone, and the Z Fold beat out the iPhone in every result except the night mode test, just as I had expected. Once again, one of my favourite features of folding phones is the use of flex mode, and when it comes to the camera, flex mode is super handy. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use it as a makeshift tripod, and it enables you to get so many different kinds of shots you can never dream of with a dull, lackluster slap. The Z Fold has up to a 30 times zoom, and yes, it's not as good as the S23 Ultra's 100 times zoom, and considering the S23 Ultra is a cheaper phone with a better camera, it's confusing. But you know what? The 30 times zoom is more than good enough, and the added utility of flex mode to help you get pictures and videos beats the benefits of the better camera on the S23 Ultra, in my opinion. And unlike any slab phone, you can use the back cameras to take a selfie, or of course you can use the outer front facing camera, or you could always use the under display camera, but well, that camera's kind of interesting. Samsung is using older tech to cover the display, and unlike the newest ZTE Axon 40, where you can't see the pixel matrix of the Z Fold, you can clearly see the under display pixel matrix. When you take a picture of the under display camera, it's awful. Although I do use the under display camera when I do video calls. Of course, just like any phone, the Z Fold hits all the fundamentals well. Calls are loud and crisp, the speakers sound excellent, and Samsung's jam-packed amount of features and fun is as fun as ever. And all the colours the phone is offered in are also stunning. I got the icy blue variant, which matches quite well to my sky blue Z Flip 4. But as much as I love the icy blue colour, I want to keep my phone protected, so I've debranded my phone, as a phone that costs $1,800 should not be unprotected. This takes me to the most key part of the video, the price. The base model with 256GB of storage starts at $1,800, $1,919 for 512 gigs, and $21,509.99 for 1TB, which is astronomically high. But no other phone does what the Z Fold can do. Overall, if you want your phone to do everything, any phone works, but if you want your phone to do everything and more on a bigger screen, the Z Fold 5 is the phone for you.